Hello, everyone. It's Granny back again, and today we are going to continue our series on Where is Sebastian? And we are currently watching the interview with Katie and Chris and Holly Montgomery on WSMV4, and that interview was published on the 4th of March. But we're watching it and also watching the analysis from the behavior panel on the behavior of Chris and Katie in hopes to learn new information. So on the last one, I noticed, that Katie seemed more distraught to me than I remembered. Whether she's a good actress or not, in my opinion, she looked like a distraught mother. Chris, on the other hand, did not surprise me because he showed a detachment, in my opinion, towards Katie and even towards Sebastian. So we're going to break this down a little bit every single day just to kind of take a look, see what we think, and that way our videos are not so long. Okay, so let's look at the next one. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And let's get started.
So here we are, 8 days now searching for him. Walk us through that Sunday night that he went missing. So walk us through, we've got so many people who really want to know, okay, how did this happen? So kind of just walk us through that night.
We were out and about that day. We were having a really good weekend. We got home. Everything was pretty normal. He was playing in his room. When I told him to go to bed, he did. He said, "Good night, Mom. I love you." Said goodnight to his puppies. A little bit later, I wound up going to bed, and when I woke him up for school, he wasn't there.
So in your mind, that's usually around what time? When do you normally wake up? Around 6 o'clock?
6.
So were you instantly thinking something's wrong, or were you like, he may just be already in the shower?
I took a second and walked through the house looking for him in case he'd gotten up and was trying to get breakfast or something, because he did that sometimes. About 3 minutes in, give or take, I was on the phone with my husband. I said, "I can't find him." He said, "What do you mean you can't find him?" I said, "He's not in the house."
And so at that point, is that when you call 911?
Okay. In looking at Katie here, she seems genuinely upset. To me, it looks as though she's reliving what she's been through. I'm not saying she's innocent, guys. I'm not saying she's guilty. We don't know. Right? We do not know for sure. So I'm just saying, in this interview, she looks very distraught.
What's going through your mind?
While we were on the phone, and I was like, is he on the other side of the bed? The normal places he may be in the house, and he wasn't. So I was like, okay, well, hold on a minute. And immediately after that, we called the sheriff's department and made a report.
I ran all over the house, outside, inside. I looked in every closet.
Within minutes, they were here. They responded within minutes, and here we go. Oh.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
There's one line in here that got to me when I was watching it, and it's when I woke him up for school, he wasn't there. Reminds me of a sheriff in Texas who said, "It'll kill you big enough to die." So some strange wording, but it's an outlier. So let's look into it. This could be habit, the way that she speaks and references this action, and this could be indicative of him being present or being there. I'll let you decide if you feel like jumping to something right away. A lot of people feel good about doing that. At this point in the clip and in the videos, I'm not seeing a typical amount of behavior here that would make me suspicious. And at the 8-day mark, they're still expressing some signs of hopefulness, which is good to see. They're looking at each other more here, as I would want to see. They're more willing to look away from the interviewer and connect.
Okay. Just want to stop it there. What do you guys think of what she said? I never thought about that until he brought that up. I went to wake him up for school and he wasn't there. I don't know. Do you think there's anything to that, or do you think there's something there?
During these critical parts of their recollection. And the stepfather, is detailing going through a search of the house comfortably with added detail that we'd expect to see in innocent people. And in a case of somebody who's guilty, I would more expect to see that somebody would not want to go backward from the 911 call to add more details. And if you notice, that's what happens here. They go backwards. So he's comfortable doing this. It's a good sign. And when a piece of a story comes out that's rehearsed and false, the story is, it's super hard to go backward. And often you'll see people are more likely to be guilty, feeling this internal pressure to continue down the path of what makes them comfortable. And what makes them comfortable is something that they've rehearsed. So the father's using comfortable hand gestures that are timed with his speech. The mother is using her eyes and head comfortably to illustrate searching the house. And earlier we talked about the mother's rocking back and forth and that we need to pay attention to it. This part here is where I wanted to look. And when there's a critical part of a story coming out that's deceptive, this takes up so much mental energy to be deceptive that the body would stop rocking to focus the mind on the story. She keeps rocking through it. And what I'll be looking for from a profiling perspective is when the rocking stops. Blink rate, gestures, facial expressions, and movements are all in line with somebody being truthful and honest. One big thing to notice is that there's no focus in either of them on managing perception and exaggerating the sadness and grief. Those are the two big things we see in just about, I think, maybe 100% of these videos. Manage perception, exaggerate the sadness and the grief. We're not seeing those two big hallmarks. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, when I asked him to go to bed, he did, and there's a little bit of an exhale of laughter around that. So a release of tension around that. My guess is, and I'm speculating here, is you've got a male here reaching teenage, more testosterone, therefore more obstinate on the spectrum as well. So that can exacerbate the routines and you know, the sense of risk as well, doing things that are more risky. Obviously, we know that levels of testosterone, as they go up, we see less risk in the world. We'll take more risks the more testosterone that we have going around our body. That's why if you're a male, a male will have a propensity on the aggregate to create more testosterone than a female. Not every day, but most days, if you aggregate all males together. And that's why you will pay more for your driving insurance, especially if you're anywhere between 15 and 23, because you see the world as less risky the more testosterone you're creating in your body. So just a little behavioral thing there of we've maybe got a male here that is seeing less risk in the world. And so it's interesting to the mother that she asks him to do something and he does it. So, no blame, though, to the child. He's not a runner. He's a good kid. He's not mischievous. You know, often in examples where we do see parents involved in some way or holding back information, there will be some level of blame placed around the kid. Here, we've got no level of blame. Look, let's just look at the male here. We're not going to see grief in the forehead here because the guy's wearing a cap and he's shaded as well. So we're not seeing some of the areas of the body that we would like to see if we're to see grief, if grief is there at all. I don't know whether it is or not. We may see it in other parts of the face, but we're not going to see it in the forehead here. I don't know why. There's a deep exhale. I don't know why he walked out that door. Deep exhale there. So there's clearly a pause there before why he walked out the door. What's that about? I don't know. I'm not a mind reader, but clearly there's a pause for thought about the idea of him walking out the door. Is it a pause for thought about the possibility that he was walked out the door in some way or taken out the door in some way? I don't know, but certainly there's.
Okay. The pause for thought as to why he walked out that door, in my opinion, we know there's no evidence that he walked out that door. So that pause for thought could very well be that Katie knows he didn't walk out that door, but she's trying to spin a narrative. My opinion, guys, totally my opinion.
There's a pause, there's a moment taken there. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, Mark, interesting. You bring up the whole, we can't see his forehead, so we can't tell if there's grief. But I do see something interesting in the beginning. I see a grimace, kind of a grimace in his face and a deep swallow. We usually associate those with really strong negative emotion, usually. Now, it could be something else. But we just came out of the last video.
How very interesting, guys. A grimace, right? And they said that they usually see that in a negative emotion. So, I don't know. I'll let you decide how you want to think about that.
Going into this one, so it's related to that last question around the kid. So I think it's still there. His blink rate is really low. I think part of that is his baseline. If we watch, he does a flutter occasionally, but when she starts to bring up so many people, I think this is a hot button for him. We'll find out later. When she does that, his blink rate jumps. It pulses right through the roof. And he goes into internal voices. She's talking and mills his hands. Now, here's where people automatically say that means he's lying. Well, for us, it means something's going on in his head. He's milling his hands. We don't know why. We can see it. We can't see his hands. We know he's feeling stressed, but there's a missing kid involved. Mark, to your point, we don't know their relationship. We don't know any of that. One interesting and odd part of body language to me that does occur. She says, we had a really good weekend, and he's down to his left in internal thought and disengaged with his eyes, and then he raises his head and nods yes. Well, if he's not home, how does he know what that was, or is he just supporting her is the question. So we'll look for a pattern of that, looking for where he's trying to endorse something versus.
Exactly. If he wasn't home, how did he know?
Is just supporting what she's saying. We really can't tell. And I agree with you, Mark, when the mother laughs about he did go to bed, he's been defiant. Clearly, you can tell that. And here's an interesting one. I've tried to find out whether he was home, whether he was away at this time. She says, I went to bed. I, not we, I. So interesting. That means, sounds like he wasn't home. She would have to be very thoughtful and use the pronouns if she was going to cover that. And then let's see. If you listen to her cadence slow, Chase, I'm with you 100%. We always talk about these guys managing perception. If we go back and look at the Madeline Soto case, the stepfather managing perception, the mother managing perception, none here, none of it. They're just going on about their business. And he's using big illustrators when he's telling the details of the story. I mean, Bray says larger indicators indicate more likely being being honest. And then she uses big illustrators with her face. She's going from outside to inside. So those things are good. All those pieces start to look good. Only a couple of cues. Chase, yours, the word pattern shift is weird. I went to woke him up. And then the one with the endorsing with his head movement or saying, yes, we did have a good weekend. Can't figure out which it is. We'll figure out and watch as we go. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I woke him up and he wasn't there. I agree. I think that's cultural, because people talk like that. And I'm from there, not Hendersonville, but from the South in this area, and spent many years, in that area. Know a lot of people in Hendersonville. That's the way they talk. And so I wouldn't think there's much to that. Maybe, I don't know, but that's the way I'm looking at it. What bothers me about this is he said we called 911, and then when the sheriff's department showed up, he said they showed up within minutes, and here we go. So it's this lateral logic thing where you're presented with some facts, and you assume the dad is home during that, like when all that's happening, where he couldn't possibly be home if she just found out and called him, and then he came, and then when he was in, where was he? We found out in
Memphis,
Georgia.
Yeah, but or Memphis. But let's also realize just because this is a thing we deal with all the time. If that were the case, Wendy Adelson, then that whole thing would not be an issue. You don't have to have proximity to have involvement. So, yeah, I think it's fair to still look at him as if, right?
Yeah. So it still makes me wonder. When I first started this, I was under the impression he was at home that night and then went to Memphis that morning. So I figured maybe he's the last one to see the kid. And I went down this road of looking at him from an entirely different angle and couldn't believe how relaxed he was. And I thought, this is a cold dude, man, because he's so relaxed. And so, but there are some things, if you look at it from that angle, you'll say, you know what? I think this guy there might be something up here. But if he's been in Memphis 2 weeks, then
I like what he's saying there. So he's really trying to figure Chris out, right? It's kind of a cold dude, right? Yeah. But then, then he's trying to think, well, if he's been in Memphis all that time, he's skeptical. I can see it as he's talking. He's skeptical about whether Chris was really gone all that time that he says, or was he not? I think a lot of us are the same way.
They don't hold up to that. So it could go either way. But anyway, back to the lateral logic thing. You're given information, but there's that one little piece missing. You don't get in there and look for that one little piece of information, and you accept everything and move on without thinking about it. And that's what I had done. And I love lateral logic, so I can't believe that got by me. But they do, in this one, they don't look at each other or touch each other either. She's leaned back or leaned forward as a grieving person usually does. That's totally normal. He's leaned back a little bit. That's another thing that made me think about him some. But he's probably, he's not as emotionally involved in this as she is because it's not his real son. I know that sounds horrible, but there's a big difference there when you're mad at this. You say you don't get along with this kid's father, and I don't know how long these two have been married. May not be very long. Maybe doesn't have a good relationship with the child. So that could be the reason for that. We're not seeing any comparable stress on him at all. He looks fairly relaxed, which makes me think he's so relaxed that he's not worried about thinking, I did this. I've got to watch it. Back to perception management. They're not doing any of that at all. It's like they don't care, because if you didn't do it, you shouldn't care. There's no reason to do that. So that's really interesting. His voice doesn't sound stressed. He doesn't show any upheavals of emotion or any emotions at all, really.
His voice doesn't sound stressed. He doesn't show any upheavals of emotion or any emotions at all. To me, that's very telling. But then again, I said it earlier, maybe it was in the last video, where Chris, the only emotion I've ever seen Chris use is when he's angry. which doesn't say a whole lot for him. Of course, I'm not with him every day. I don't know what that's like, but he has not. The biggest thing that I'm seeing in this interview, and I've seen it in others, is he does not show any care, any love, any concern for a wife who has a missing son. None whatsoever. Let's say off the top of our head that he didn't care about Sebastian. Okay? That's fine. Okay? Some stepfathers just are not that way. But supposedly he still loves his wife. And if his wife is hurt and upset, wouldn't he show care and concern and love for her? And he's not doing it. My opinion.
As he goes through this, he does look at her a few times throughout the interview, but she never looks at him outside of the 2 times that we'll see them look at each other when they go through here. But neither one has said the child's name yet. Doesn't mean anything. Some, in this situation may not mean anything, but we haven't heard his name yet, except from the interviewer.
And that's another good point. Neither one of them have said Sebastian's name yet.
One of those tape replays.
So here we are, 8.
Okay, guys. So that's it for today as far as Chris goes. Chris, Katie, this part of the interview. What are your guys' thoughts? I want to know. Tell me in the comment section what your thoughts are, what you're seeing. Do you think that Katie looks distraught in this interview? What are your thoughts about Chris? And guys, it may sound strange, and some people may say we're picking on Chris and Katie, but no. In reality, what you have to look at is Sebastian was last at Chris and Katie's house. That was the last place he lived there. He wasn't with his dad when he disappeared. Okay? Katie said that. Chris has said that. So he didn't disappear from Seth's home. He disappeared from Chris and Katie's home. And so just as I'm sure law enforcement has looked into behavior analysis for Chris and Katie, that's what we're looking at. We're taking a close look. And like I said, I may not agree with everything that the behavior panel has said, but I'm no professional. But I think it's important to look at what they're saying because they are the professionals. And they have pointed out they have made some really good points, guys, in my opinion. But I want to know what you think, okay? So on our next video, we're going to continue the same interview and the same, the behavior analysis with the behavior panel. By the way, if you have not subscribed to the behavior panel, go and do so. They are awesome. I have watched a bunch of different analyses of theirs, and they are really good. Whether I always agree with them or not is not the point. They're the professionals, not me, and I'm going to, take a look at what they have to say. So anyway, that'll be all for today. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one, guys. Thank you for watching another episode of Granny's Crime Busters. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to subscribe and like and even share the content. You can follow us on any of our other social media platforms at YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We really appreciate you guys, and you can also email us at granniescrimebusters@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the next one.